Welcome everybody to the latest episode of Celebrating Entrepreneurs and the value, the job creation, the wealth that they bring to the economy. And it's particularly important, obviously, because we are coming through the pandemic in the United Kingdom. So I'm pleased to be joined again by one of the partners at Hatch Ventures, who are the business really, the inspiration for this set of programs. Fred Sinea. Fred, good to see you again.
Hi, Lawrence. Good to see you.
As I say, we're sort of beginning, we have a roadmap in the political language for coming out of the pandemic. Just remind everybody, what's the importance of recognising and celebrating entrepreneurs and the businesses that they are part of?
I think for Hatch, we ultimately invest in entrepreneurs. So we're a people business. We're investing in the people that are building, incredible digital companies up and down the UK and in Europe and Ireland as well. For us, entrepreneurs are kind of the life and soul of the UK business economy. And we've seen that over the last year through COVID, with entrepreneurs adapting, employing people. And, we spoke in a couple of episodes ago how across our portfolio, we've had no one on furlough, no one laid off, which is quite a contrast to what you see and read in the headlines. So for us, entrepreneurs, make the economy tick. We're big believers in them. We're big fans of schemes like EIS, which we talk about a lot for backing and supporting entrepreneurs. And I'm looking forward to this session with Devan today because Devan's operating in actually a really key space in the pandemic as well. So yeah, it's going to be exciting.
Perfect, good way to start, and we won't steal his thunder. So yeah, very pleased to be joined by one of those really dynamic businesses and the entrepreneur who's part of it, Devan Hughes. Devan, good to see you.
Good to see you, Lawrence. Thank you very much for the invite.
Now, as sort of Fred said, I mean, there's kind of many things that really have sort of changed about everybody's sort of daily lives through the pandemic. Much of that change probably will never go back to what was happening before. Now, I know your business, the one we're going to talk about now, you clearly were running before the pandemic really started, but just tell us who and what the business is, and then just tell us a little bit about how you got started.
Sure, no problem. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Buymie. Buymie is today Ireland's largest same-day grocery e-commerce platform, with operations also in the UK. We've launched into Bristol, in our first UK city, in the last 6 to 7 months. So we see tremendous opportunity across the UK. So essentially what we do is we allow users to order grocery and household items from large enterprise grocers, likes of Asda and Tesco's and Co-op and Little today, and have their items delivered store to door in as little as an hour by their very own personal shopper. And what we essentially do is we facilitate the entire fulfillment and digital and logistics infrastructure for retailers and customers to connect in a whole new way.
Fascinating. Now, as I say, that the business has been going, well before the sort of pandemic. So, kind of, what was the inspiration, really?
Well, look, the idea for Buymie came from the place where all great ideas come from, Lawrence, over a pint of Guinness in an Irish pub. And so I was maybe a little bit about my own background. So I'm not originally grocery or even technology. I spent the vast majority of my career working in the energy sector, working with large retailers and manufacturers to trade and hedge their gas and electricity positions. In 2014, I was getting the itch to start another business. Buymie is my 5th business. I've had 4 spectacular little failures that have gotten me into this mess. And I was looking to do something else, and I was having a pint with a friend, and he said to me just in passing, Devan, do you know that the online grocery e-commerce market in Ireland, UK is worth £9 billion, but it loses £300 million a year. And that was the aggregate losses of all the retailers combined. At that time in my career, I was spending a lot of time looking at macro market behaviors, particularly within the commodity sector. And I just found it fascinating that there was such a large market in just 2 countries, because not many markets that big in just 1 or 2 countries. And I just found it so interesting that it was so dysfunctional. And I spent about 6 months obsessing about this market, researching it, in my evenings and weekends. And I realized that actually the fundamentals of the market were quite flawed. You had essentially what had happened in the dot-com frenzy in the late 90s, early 90s. Retail had decided to adopt a totally not fit for purpose distribution model for grocery. They took the Webvan approach, and I'm not sure if you know Webvan, but Webvan was the first pure play online grocery business that came out of the dot-com boom. It raised a bunch of money, it grew super quickly, and then it spectacularly imploded, and really kind of became scorched earth in the US in terms of the sector for investment. But what happened is that European grocers took this model and essentially have been running this, cash burning model for the best part of a quarter of a century. And it's lost billions. But one of the challenges I saw was that the long-term demand curve for online grocery was set to double to 20 billion in just 10 years. And this was not including COVID. COVID was not a factor in this instance. And so my free market economist hat went on. And I said, well, if you have a rapidly expanding market and heavily compounding losses, it's very likely that the market won't tolerate this inefficiency for very long, and there'll be a disruption is afoot. So I thought this could be just a very interesting sector to spend a decade or two of my career. And I decided to go after it.
Fascinating. And what made that good idea in a pub? Because I think a lot of us have had a good idea in a pub and then we either can't remember it or don't know what to do with it. What took it from that to kind of where you are today?
That's a great question, Lawrence. You're dead right. Ideas are a dime a dozen. Execution is everything. And I think the fact that I had four businesses behind me at that stage, if there was a word, I was quite methodical, I suppose is the word to use in terms of how I approached it. So, the first question I asked myself is, okay, is there, have I done the desktop research? Do I think there's a market opportunity? And I had done that. 6 months worth of research and had given me that. I then realized, okay, well, what will this business look like? And, I realized very quickly that the disruption wasn't going to come from the grocery sector itself. It was going to be driven by technology. And, one of the most disruptive technologies to come out of the last 10 years is platform technology, multi-sided platform technology. It's reshaping many different industries. And so I decided that I needed to get experience, because investors weren't going to take me seriously as a tech CEO and co-founder with no experience, and particularly so that was an area of challenge for me. Now I can tell you all the reasons why the energy market and the background I have within demand side management for electricity is relevant, but that's a much longer story. So to keep it simple, I decided to quit my job in the energy market, and I went and got a job in Salesforce, one of the largest cloud computing platform businesses in the world. And I spent a year. I wanted to go there for a year. I wanted to do a master's in platform. I wanted to learn everything I could about platform design and architecture, but also how to sell the vision of technology and innovation and disruption, which Salesforce has been doing very successfully for a very long time. I spent the first 6 months doing that, and then I spent the next 6 months of my tenure in the business starting the process of Buymie, and that involved pulling together a small founding team of like-minded fools such as myself, raising a small bit of money. We raised 100,000 euros pre-seed capital, 25k friends and family, 50,000 euros from Enterprise Ireland, and 25,000 euros from the only angel investor I knew at that time, who happened to be a mentor. And we then went out and we validated the idea. So actually, before we even started building the prototype or raising money, we went out and we surveyed every weekend. I would round up a bunch of friends and family, and we'd go down to shopping centers and high streets, and we would survey customers and ask them, why did they not shop online? What was the biggest barriers to entry? If they could get delivery on the same day, would that change their mind? So we really started to get an understanding. I think we surveyed about 12 to 1,300 people. And that gave us a good sense of what society would want, what the consumer market might want. And once we had a good, clear vision on that, we started to actually build the product. And so we built our first version of Buymie, the MVP app. And then in February 2016, a week to the year of me joining Salesforce, I quit my job at Salesforce and I became Buymie's very first grocery delivery person. And that's the abridged version of how we went about starting the business. So when I say methodical, it was, like I said, it was very deliberate. It took me about 18 months altogether to get from, oh, this is a great idea in a pub, to, okay, we're doing this.
Fascinating. Now, Fred, I kind of almost can guess from just part of that story that Devan's told us what appealed to you and the Hatch team about Devan, but also about the business, because again, I suspect when you first came across him, our closest example of a business like this, it's certainly mainland kind of England, is Ocado, which frankly has had a largely rubbish press until about the last sort of 12 months. So what about Devan appealed to you? What about the business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, firstly, he came to England to meet me, which is probably rare. So that was a big tick. I think a couple of things for us. One, we had a good understanding of the grocery industry. We had sold our previous business into Morrisons, the fourth largest supermarket in the UK at the time. So we had an understanding of the challenges of the traditional man in a van approach. Secondly, I think Devan used the word methodical. We loved Devan's approach at spending that year at Salesforce and his background experience in the energy sector, and then being able to apply that. He did the research before he came into the market, which I think is probably quite unique for entrepreneurs. I think we meet lots of people that have ideas and start them instantly, and Devan took kind of a phased approach to that. Thirdly, we invested at kind of an MVP proof of concept stage, I guess, in the sense that Devan was out picking. They were doing a relatively modest number of orders and revenue a month, but the model had some kind of proof point for us. I think what Devan's proved to us over the 3 years now is his ability to execute on plans which are super ambitious. Devan's probably one of the most ambitious entrepreneurs we have in our portfolio, because the grocery market is so big and the opportunity is so big. And if you don't have that ambition to play at that level of the market, then we're going to end up with a small business that's going to be beaten off by one of the other players in the market. So for us, it was the right time in a hot market, and we had to have a vision that it was going to mature over 3 or 4 years to the point where it is now. And of course, COVID has played into that slightly last year as well.
And just, Fred, let me just sort of pick up on the methodical point, because I guess you'll have seen it a lot more than me, but we're all very good at saying there's a big industry here with a big number, often from a report from somebody like McKinsey's, so there must be a business in here. It's unusual for people to do the level of research, particularly literally on the ground research that Devan and some of the other team did, going out talking to shoppers. That must be something that gave you some real kind of, I guess, reassurance, and is probably a good lesson for other entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think the deep kind of in-depth knowledge that Devan was able to build by both interviewing shoppers and examining the market is really important. What Devan looked at is something that most people shied away from, which is the grocers lose money on every single order. And to Devan's point, that can't exist forever. Something has to be done. But that was just the norm, and Tesco have accepted that for 15 years, whereas now we're challenging that status quo.
Now, Devan, you sort of modestly said you've had sort of 3 or 4 failures behind you. Briefly, what did you learn from 1 or 2 of those? And again, the sort of sacrifice question, do you feel that you've really kind of had to make sacrifices to the point of, I don't know, paying bills on your credit card, all those kind of things?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what did I learn? So yeah, look, I believe entrepreneurship is a muscle. I don't believe you're born an entrepreneur. I think it's something that's developed over time, and the more you try and the more you do it, the more developed that muscle becomes, and the easier it becomes to lift the heavy thing. And so I started my first business in my final year of university, and I felt like I was coming out like, I had always had an interest in entrepreneurship, but I didn't really have an industry that I was kind of passionate enough about to go after. And so what I found myself doing was I wanted a finance degree in university, something I could take with me to any industry, any sector, any job. And my first business was importing electric golf trolleys. I had it in my head there was a gap in the market, and this tells you, how different my market timing, how much better my market timing has gotten. I decided to start a golf distribution business in the middle of a recession. I graduated university in 2010, and Ireland was in the death grip of a recession. Golf clubs were going bust left, right, and centre. And here's me, spending 30,000 euros on a 40-foot container of 180 golf trolleys. So started selling that, driving around the country, selling that into pro shops, and that really kind of taught me a lot: import, export, cash flow management, bad debt. Direct selling, just a blend of different things. But I'm not a militant entrepreneur. I like to look at my entire career more holistically. I don't look at what I've done just in starting businesses. Actually, all the roles that I've had, all the jobs that I've done, all stitch into how I do what I do today. One of my first jobs was selling shoes in Foot Locker when I was 16, and that's when I first learned how to upsell. I used to sell door-to-door electricity for SSE. Talk about building quick rapport with people in a stressful environment. When you're knocking on their door at 8 o'clock in the evening trying to sell them an electricity contract, you learn to deal with varying degrees of personalities very quickly. And so all these different skill sets for me are all a part of the tool belt. When I left college, like I said, we were in a recession, and I figured, I could always go and do a master's and try and wait out the recession. Many of my friends did. I could always go get a job. There's never going to be a shortage of employers. But I had no mortgage, I had no kids, and I thought, what, I'm going to be, an entrepreneur. I'm going to start a business because I've no reason not to. And so I ended up, over the course of maybe 3 years, starting about 3 businesses in quick succession, and they all failed, for various different reasons. And I found myself at the end of the third, needing to take a bit of a break. I needed to I wanted to get a job in a more established startup or business so that I could see what I was missing, because I was getting something wrong, and I wanted to see what an established business looked like, how it operated. But also I just needed a break. I needed to recover mentally, emotionally, and spiritually from the process of trying to start a company, because it's incredibly intense. But one of the things I've always approached, and you asked me, have I made sacrifices? Absolutely. There's been opportunity cost. But I don't believe starting a business requires excessive risk. I wrote an article, it's on my LinkedIn for anyone who's interested. It's like, how to quit your cushy 9-to-5 and start your own business. Step 1, don't quit your fucking job, right? Like, this idea that I have to quit my job to start my business is a folly. What I've always done is, if you want to de-risk something, you have to put the work in. You have to do the homework. You have to do the research. You have to become an expert. And so the way I've approached that is just, using my evenings and my weekends to de-risk. And I'll put gates in front of each step. So I researched the market, second half of 2014, decided, okay, I want to get into this. I want to look at starting this business. So step 1, need to build some experience in technology. So I'll go and work in the technology industry, join a big platform company. Upside is the money was way better in tech than it was in energy. So that's an upside regardless. I'll build experience in the technology industry. And if I come across a barrier within the validation process, the MVP process, the raising capital process, worst case scenario, I'm still in a large tech company and I can, continue on my journey, whatever that may be. And then when I decided to, okay, I've done those pieces, now I'm going to raise some capital, raise 100,000 euros. That'll give me at least 12 months worth of runway. But I have to take a big pay cut. And that was the reality. So I took I think a 70% pay cut and went down to 30 grand a year at the time. And that was just to make sure that I could, keep living and paying my bills. Luckily, I had a very supportive wife. I call her the stable leg in the relationship. So, she was able to kind of, support this decision and this journey. And as a household, our quality of life wasn't impacted significantly. The biggest sacrifice for me over the last, couple of years, but more so in the first couple of years, is that there was no other grocery delivery. I was the only grocery delivery person. I had to do 1,800 grocery orders in the first 20 months of the business. We built the technology stack from the ground up. And to do that, I had to go out and find every possible way to screw up a grocery order. And I did. I could confidently say I found every single way to screw up a customer's experience. But in doing so, we built all of the processes that would allow us to navigate around that and scale. And that for me was always the big question is, okay, when I found a problem, how can I engineer a process here that's going to scale well? And that, that is seamless in its interaction with all stakeholders. But in that time, the amount of time I had to sacrifice. We operate 9 till 10, Monday to Sunday. If an order came in, I could be in a restaurant, I could be in a cinema watching a movie with my wife, and if an order came in, I was leaving. And I would leave. I would leave her in the middle of a movie in the cinema theater, and I would go and get my car and I'd go do an order, and then I'd come back and collect her afterwards. That was my life for the best part of 2 years. Because if I didn't do it, no one else would. And if I didn't do it, my KPIs would be hit. And if my KPIs were hit, no investors would believe our vision and our story. So I think for me, the biggest sacrifice has been time, the opportunity cost, of course, and salary. But I don't take unnecessary risks. I don't rack up credit card debt. I have no debt as an entrepreneur. I have no loans. And that for me has been quite important to make sure that, if things go sideways, that, I don't come out the back of this with a hole that I have to crawl out of. I want to be on par, and I want to be able to roll it into my next journey, whether that's a job working for another great company, which could very well be, or whether it's starting another venture. And for me, like I said, I'm not militant about my entrepreneurship. You know, I love working for great companies. I love building great companies. For me, it's much the same.
Fascinating. And Fred, what do you think Hatch brings to Devan's business? Because clearly, as you quite rightly said, you and Scott in particular sold a business to Morrison's in the past, so you've got a good understanding of the supermarket sort of sector. But what else? I guess given Devan didn't have a traditional technology background, that's some of the expertise that you can bring.
I think one of the biggest things that's probably underestimated is that we invested very early in the journey. So, and we've had this feedback from a few founders, Devan included. We grasped the concept and the opportunity at a very early stage, and we're able to lead around, and that helps bring others to the party as well. I mean, especially if you want to raise your first round as an entrepreneur, or first kind of institutional round, then you need someone to lead that round, and that helps bring the rest along. So we invested very early. So of course, the obvious answer there is cash. I guess outside of that, our experience in grocery, I imagine, is helpful. The ability to make introductions to other investors, to other retailers, to relationships, and also, just some, the kind of non-obvious stuff of, we've been through this process now multiple times. We've had a few exits between us now. We're working on another exit now where we've actually been drafted in and we're leading the M&A. I think we can dip in and out of companies really well, and hopefully Devan can utilize each of our own individual experience and collectively as he sees fit.
And Devan, from your perspective, what do you feel that sort of kind of Hatch has brought that so essentially, I guess, made life simpler, made it easier for you to kind of get on running, developing and expanding the business?
Yeah, I'm glad I get to contribute to that question, because Fred's been quite modest. They invested when I was doing deliveries, and we were turning over about €8,000 a month, I think, at that stage. Like, we're well into 6 figures a month now. So I mean, the growth trajectory it's in the hundreds X return in terms of the position that we're now in. But the biggest thing that Scott and Fred brought was, one, they got the concept straight away, but I had no credibility. Like, this is my first venture-backed business. I was not a known quantity. I had no reputation either in grocery or technology, or just even in venture. And so for me, what the most valuable aspect in the very early days was, Fred and Scott really let me stand on their shoulders for quite a long time. And it's funny they say, oh, we led around. I mean, there's leading around, which is like writing a term sheet, and then there's leading around, which is what Hatch did, because we had a target of 750K for our seed round, and I was 100K shy with 7 weeks worth of runway left. And when I say 7 weeks worth of runway left, as in I was running out of the 100,000 euros that I'd raised, and I was paying myself salary doing deliveries, and we wanted to raise the 750 target. And at the last minute, I decided I want to do a crowdfunding round because we were 100K short. And Fred and Scott actually got on camera, and they were not investors in the business at this stage. They got on camera and actually pitched our business to the UK market, the UK crowd investor market. They were a part of the story before they ever wrote a check. And for me, that was quite important, because what I saw was, two very committed, and I always say, like, Fred and Scott are entrepreneurs before they're investors. I think that's really important. And particularly for early stage investment, I think that's even increasingly important. I think as you go further down in line, you get, investors can become much more institutional and professional. But I think in the very early stages, you need that entrepreneurial bent and scope to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff to a certain extent. But to see Fred and Scott put their name on the project and the business so publicly, with a still big question mark as to whether we were going to be successful in raising the round, for me was indicative of the type of approach that Hatch takes to its investments. They're all in, and they didn't just lead that round. Scott and Fred have written the first check, I think, for our first 3 rounds. They were the first people. When we were in a room, we say, guys, we need to raise a round, and we're having difficulty. Scott and Fred were the first ones with their hands up, and once one hand goes up, then everyone starts to build a bit of confidence. And for many, many, many years, Fred and Scott have been the kernels of confidence in our boardroom.
Lovely. And in terms of sort of job creation, because one of the things we've been talking about with entrepreneurs and Hatch are very passionate about is the new job creation. Obviously fundamentally important at any time in an economic cycle, probably never more so than now. How many sort of jobs have you managed to create sort of so far, sort of, Devan? And perhaps if you can give us a little bit of idea of kind of vision for the future, where that might that take you.
Yeah. And so I recently did an interview for Shelf Life magazine, and one of the questions they asked me was like, what are you most proud of about the business? And being very honest, you know, what we've gone through in the last 12 months as a society, a global society, because we've all had this joint experience. It's not been siloed into one country. You know, the thing that I'm most proud of is that, you know, in a time where job creation seems somewhat of a novelty, you know, we were hiring hand over fist. You know, we hired last year. We announced that we were going to hire 200 additional shoppers across Ireland. In 2020, we did that, and we're still hiring. So today, you know, we have about 410 active shoppers across 3 cities and 2 countries. You know, for me, that's incredibly important. You know, being able to provide people with access to flexible labor is you know, again, one of the nicest aspects of this journey that I've been on. And not only that, but our full-time team has grown tremendously. I mean, we're half Armenian business. My co-founder is Armenian, and we have 30 full-time employees now based out in Yerevan. A lot of our technology development, I often say, you know, Armenia is our motherland. It's where all of our tech and innovation is born from. And so you know, prior to COVID, I would have spent a couple of weeks every quarter over with the team there. But you know, we've grown the team tremendously. We've hired an operations team there and a new operations manager. We've started to build out some of our team there. So it's about 32 full-time employees there. And then we have overall across Ireland and the UK, we're up to just under 50, I think 49 full-time employees. You know, that's about 180% growth in job creation for us, you know, over just the last 12 months. So for me, that's been quite exciting. Looking forward, you know, I mean, we're growing. At the moment, we're about 530% year to date in terms of volume of orders and revenue. And so shoppers are going to be a big part of that. And we see ourselves onboarding and recruiting, you know, possibly thousands, well, yeah, very likely thousands of shoppers in the next, you know, 36 months across both Ireland and the UK. As we continue to grow out this new channel of kind of same day large basket grocery delivery rather. And in terms of our core team, we've, you know, another 12 hires to make this year alone, and you know, we expect to probably be close to 100 employees by the end of next year.
Lovely. And just final question: what would sort of success look like when you're sat in the pub in X number of years' time, looking back at what you've achieved with Buymie? Obviously, you'll have a list of all those films you never saw the end of, but you'll be able to see that. What sort of real success? What do you think will make you sort of really proud of what you've achieved?
Having fundamentally altered supply chain of the grocery e-commerce market. You know, one of the things I'm so deeply excited about the flaws of this market and this industry, and I'm so excited about the impact that we're having. You know, we've now become a very significant thought leader in the industry across Ireland and the UK. We're advising, you know, C-level teams within the grocery industry about, you know, the shifts that are happening within the technology and particularly the platform economy. You know, the existential risk that the likes of Amazon poses to the industry is quite significant. And you know, I've often said if Amazon is tsunami for retail, Buymie is a life raft. And our goal is to make sure that brick and mortar retail survive that tsunami and come out stronger than ever. You know, we are building what will be one of the most influential shared infrastructures for the industry in years to come. And our goal is to make sure that we have an impact. And so I think, you know, if I'm sitting in a couple of years' time and I'm able to say that we've had a material impact to the industry in a positive way, I think we've achieved our mission.
Super. And Fred, sort of final word to you. I mean, Devan just sort of touched on it there. You know, there's a real scalability about what he's doing, you know, particularly with the sort of technology that sort of takes it beyond perhaps, you know, what the business kind of might be now in terms of, you know, delivering sort of locally to people. There's real potential here, isn't there?
We've seen huge scale in other countries, right? And there's a significant opportunity in the UK and Ireland and potentially Europe in the future as well to build a platform which is profitable and has a selection of retailers on there delivering to consumers in as little as an hour. And there's no one else in the market doing it in the way that Buymie do it. And that's the exciting opportunity.
Lovely, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Devan, good luck for the future. I think probably I speak for many people who were watching this will probably end up using your service at whether it's a local supermarket or perhaps some of the other places we don't like to go ourselves. I can think of the DIY stores. I'd happily use a service for people like yourself to go out and pick up those things that I need at the weekend. Anyway, good luck for the future. Thank you for joining me.